So the way I'm going to set this up, I'm actually from the aviation sector, and you can see the airplane there. Spent 10 years running capital programs at Philadelphia International Airport, and now our firm is about 250 people, and we're just focused on systems, but aviation is no different than higher ed. It's campus-based infrastructure. Couple things about us. I'll talk about a problem statement, then I'll actually show you what innovation's going on inside infrastructure that we're part of. So we're in 59 airports, so that's a lot of lessons learned. We're seeing different procurement methods, we're seeing builders take over. So how do we standardize and come to a place that data is being driven to the organization in a standard format? So we built our organization around just the way an airport or a higher ed campus could look like, is that we have a planning and design group. We got BIM and GIS. Some of the folks from Esri, I think, are back here. We're a big Esri partner. We're an Apple partner. We're an IBM partner. So you can imagine the innovation, and Autodesk partner. You can imagine the innovation that we're bridging between all three of those. Program and construction management, we have facilities management role as well. We have a dev team onshore and offshore developing solutions, and we're the largest implementer and reseller of Maximo and Tririga in North America for aviation, okay? So that plays a role, and geospatially, everything now, every data set needs a lat long in the system. If you work in an organization, you got to keep the lights on. So these are data sets that still live in silos in aviation, and all we're trying to do is get them to an enterprise level. And why did that make a difference? It affects walls, doors, frames, maps, amenities, everything down the road. And what we believe is geospatially, we want to web aggregate a lot of this data to the right place, the right person at the right time. And that's coming, and it's here right now on some of the solutions that we're seeing. So here's the problem statement. This is happening in aviation, but I don't see why it's not happening inside of other industries as well. I'm sure it is, but everyone wants access to your data. If you're an owner, we want to know that we have accurate data so we can develop our third-party applications properly. Uber, Lyft, they want to know where the passenger is at this point. Space, lease management, we're noticing that people are losing square footage because when you put their BIM, CAD, GIS, and third-party maps together, all the lines are 20 feet apart. So we're finding a business case to improve indoor mapping and data. But they don't have a way to get there. They're going to come into your concessions folks, they're going to come in through design and construction, they'll come in through operation, and everyone's got a different answer for them. I don't know. So what we're doing inside of aviation is we created a platform with an association to basically workflow and fix all the data standards in the organization. They will upload that into a cloud-based FedGov cloud. It gets validated, and then there's an editor, a VMS editor, which could be Esri's Indoors, JiveStream, Locust Labs, all the third parties, and then it's hosted, it's converted, and then it's validated and put on an API. So everyone grabs your data from one API. And everyone internally can then start innovating because there's one source of truth data for all of your maps and all of your indoor data. So in an airport, if McDonald's changes to Burger King through a third-party app, the rest of the world will get that amenity data because they're pulling from this API. And there's actually a non-aeronautical revenue component. People will pay $200 a month, even Apple will pay to get your infrastructure's data that they know is a single source of truth. They're not in the business of recreating indoor data. So BIMCADGIS, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of it. I see a lot of passionate people here as well. The three don't connect really well, but they do in something called an IMDF, which is an indoor mapping data format, and I'll talk about that. So in a lot of design and construction, these are all the changes you'll see on the side: new construction, maintenance activities, tenant improvement, new occupants, and they're changing the physical nature of DWG files and GIS data. And what we're seeing is that, again, that third parties, the world is saying, I want to make apps, I want to be innovative, and we just can't do that right now without stitching this gap. So we believe, Enterprise GIS takes a higher role in the organization. It's the geodatabase that will feed the venue management platform while everyone goes into the geodatabase as well, and I'll show you that. And then finally, there's the VMP that I was talking about. Enforced by policy, backed by standards. I mean, it's a constant education that we're seeing that has to be in the organization from the top. Okay, how do we get there? So we go into organizations. This is no different than the rest of the world. We'll go and workshop inside who bought what software and where's the gaps coming from. And what are those gaps? You can see here in this large infrastructure, BIM and CAD was sitting up here, and in IT you had the GIS team, in planning, and IT really had no role in it. So we started to find the different gaps, and then we created them an enterprise service bus where all this data can talk. You need FTEs, you need a data coordinator, but at the end of the day, we have an administrator that is a single source of truth for all this data in the organization that can create a GeoJSON file for all third parties. That's that API data that's out there. So this is an important part. It's a thankless job to get everyone in the organization to come to workshops, but it's really a come to Jesus session where everyone is saying, I wish we can do this. I don't know why we bought this. I have 5 years left on this license. You really have to go through this audit or you can't build the foundation. Through Safe Software and FME, we built transformers and converters of all the data sets that live in the RVZ files, the geodatabase and CAD that need to come over and be converted in a matter of hours versus taking months manually that everyone is doing right now. So there's IP out there, and we're working with Esri currently on using and converting this IP. You can see the crosswalks. This is very important. We probably spent a couple years going through with Autodesk all the important pieces of their database. We don't need the entire BIM model. We need 158 flavors that are tied to the IMDF standard. Space delineation, very important. I told you the business case that people were losing, walls were not connected. You'll see this in a lot of information that's delivered to you because the policies and standards in the RFP do not have a way of delivery for all of this data. And that's something that we've developed as well. And they're putting it into aviation RFPs that we needed to deliver this way, so you're not doing double duty on the ops and maintenance side, putting it into your databases as well. And then finally, GIS, just looking at different feature classes and how they coordinate. So there is a process, and there's really no other workaround around it. You have to do it a certain way for the map makers to get the level of data on the API. We have an error reporting tool as well that we're using in Aviation. So when someone gives you a CAD file, we can go back to you and say, 3 things are wrong, you need to correct these, or would you like us to correct them? So this isn't a wild goose chase. And then finally, IMDF is created by Apple, but it will be the international format standard for mapping next year. So I will give you more information on that, where you can get it. You can read the standard, but we're very close as a business partner with Apple on helping develop the IMDF. All right, indoors. I heard Patrick was here from and the indoors team. I shot him a note. There's a lot going on with the indoors product. A lot of you may have the enterprise license for Esri. And what's it going to do? Well, it's going to be the de facto standard for mapping because you already are paying for it, but you're actually paying for it on the flat side. I don't know who's maintaining your indoors piece, but this is going to be a great tool as it matures. It's been now productized, and I think by next year, we're going to have a really fully functional indoors product. And then finally, standards. Like I said, you have to create the standards. They're created for the RFPs right now in aviation. If you don't have them now, you have to come up with a way to tell the community how to deliver it. And then network generation, this is one thing we're doing. We're the first to put the indoors product inside aviation at Fort Lauderdale Airport. So hopefully I'm here next year telling you the success. But there's network generation that really processes the indoor map with changes, adds, deletes, so forth. All right, so here's a look at the platform. And right now, this was just to show how you set up vendors and what's the approval process. But what's happening in aviation is that if someone wants access to your data, you control your own data, you own all of it. If someone wants access to your data, there is a process in the platform that lets you validate them. The association right now validates them. The owner of the infrastructure approves them. They pay for it, and then they get a key to get access to your indoor map or a GeoJSON file. So aviation wants to monetize it. You can give it away for free, but there is a process so we're not having third parties just grab this API. It's impossible to do that at this point. So what I'm going to show you here is that we're going to actually take a file, a source file, BIMCADGIS file. This is as simple as it is. And you'll be able to select a venue. Based on policy, you'll be able to partition the building or give them the whole base map, depending on what roles you want to assign to them. And really, at the end of the day, we're going to choose the RVZ file, which is a BIM file. If you had to convert this, again, it could take weeks. We're just doing a sample of a little cross-section here. But on heavy models for an airport, probably a day at the most. When he selects, let's say, a building right here and a level, they're going to view it, and you'll get to see an image of what it's supposed to look like. This is not supposed to be vectorized. It's just a generic image. There's all the GeoJSON files that the map makers get. And that's great. That's all it is. And everything in the single source of truth in your workflows, as you change it, it's automatically being changed out here. So this is something that has to be a standard, and you can obviously see the demand when it comes to that. But that's a platform that aviation is using. And now anyone needs access to your data, you say you got to go to this site, sign up, and make sure you're a key vendor. So it's at a more mature state.
Does this handle the invoicing and collection, or is it just for giving access to it?
This is access to the API, and then we would have another API for billing, whatever you're billing. If you have SAP or whatever the case is, we can stitch that together. All right, so in Broward, so the data sets now for all builders, they have to give you all the attributes the way it goes into Maximo at the front end of design. So you're not doing double duty down here to input this, which is a good thing. So let's put it all together. So here's the BIM models that the community is giving you. I'm going to put the point cloud on, and geospatially our 3D above and below for subsurface utilities, you can now see the whole campus much differently. We have all this data. It's sitting in your GIS group, or that's in your design and construction group. No one's really put it together. And then what's the benefit of this? I got two techs that go into a substation, and when they click on the floor slab here, just because they want to see something, because I'm geo-referencing and pointing to the cloud, I can see right through the floor slab, the 4 4-inch conduits. But that's not really why I'm here. I got a breaker that's out because there's power that's down. I want to click on the asset, and from whatever your CMMS system is, and I click on the asset, there's all the attributes tied to that asset. That's facilities management, what's coming up. And people ask, how do I get that? Well, you may have $1 million in professional services just collecting the data first, because it's probably grown its own ecosystem after a while, but this is where it's headed. We're beta testing with Autodesk, walking into a geofence like this room, and all the IoT devices from the machines push to my tablet. So it knows I'm here. When I leave this room and go to the other mech room, all that IoT devices push to our tablet. So I'm not getting on a ladder. I'm really looking at my critical assets maybe, but it's based on georeferencing. This is why the mapping and the indoor data is so important, because the beacon registry will be set up according to those GeoJSON files. Here's an opportunity where you can dashboard any CMMS. Those are my work orders. Here's my asset and critical assets. There's my warranty information, my manuals, my how-tos. And then finally, when we grab the API, here we're grabbing the API for Philadelphia, I can put a pin there, and then with Apple's core location, this is iOS, that pin can represent a work order or an issue, and at meter accuracy, I can, on iOS platform, through fingerprints, which we were talking about earlier, go to that pin. So I'm humanizing now work order management, but everything's based on the walls, doors, and frames that I got from the GeoJSON file. So We started off technically, but here's sort of the benefit on the back end is that if this wasn't right, you couldn't do that. You know, if the wall was not there, a partition was put in, buildings closed, whatever the case is, it's all in real time now for the map makers. So everyone's used to Wi-Fi and GPS on their phones. We are very focused on Bluetooth and RFID when it comes to infrastructure. And then there's also VLC. VLC is all the sensors in the lights. That's what the lighting manufacturers are doing. It's very expensive, and it was cute in the beginning, but if it's not being put in design and construction, it's hard to go back and retrofit sensory items in all the lights, even though that's the best distribution in the building. Under the maps, we're putting nodes, and the nodes are location-based. How do I get to something? If a wheelchair moves from here to there, I can now route them through a different node. If the escalator or elevator's down, I can route them differently, but we're doing it more for the operations and maintenance side, not for the passenger side. We created a common asset registry. Why is this important? Because Maximo, BIMCAD, whatever disparate database that a silo bought, that's okay. Let them have a naming convention that they stick with, fire alarm, CCTV. But we want a common asset registry that when that asset disappears, it disappears from all the systems. So it's connected. And it's heavily used when they're depreciating assets. But for us, it's used because we know that's the source of truth that connects all those different pieces. We've also developed 60 protocols in 6 different languages. So if I wanted to talk to Otis's elevator or look at the lighting system or plug into a jet bridge tomorrow, all of that stuff's plug and play now. We don't have to go through an extensive coding or of any sort. And we're working around Dell's Enterprise Service Bus as a way to make rules. But ABM, the largest facilities manager, they need the mapping. Why? This is important. So I have an IoT tech in our offices. He's going to go into the kitchen. This is supposed to be someone who can look at all their campuses and facilities. And it says he's registered in this application. They want to make it very simple. Did you do your job, yes or no? Here it comes. And he's going to say, yes, I did my job. The beacon says, okay, you said yes, great. I'm going to tell your supervisor. Supervisor's going to get notified, and then the supervisor's going to come back to that location, through that core location that I was showing you before, take a picture and say, you didn't do it, come back and meet me here. So this is using an application tied around mapping, but the beacon registry will be set up on that indoor venue management, indoor mapping format as well. Daimler, so now we're in automotive. Our folks are working there. So what we're doing is we're just taking the data schema from Maximo, upload it into the cloud, and then the mapping that you see there for them is coming off of that same API. So they're using the indoor mapping data format. And the big deal here is every time they can't find a part, they could lose $1 million a day because they make big axles and they're trying to find location assets. So we looked at the mapping. They wanted to get a little lens to see what assets are in a region because this facility's so big. We went in interior LiDAR, and we're going to do their entire plant now. But with that, they can also get sensor data, and then finally wayfinding instructions of how to get there. And now with RFID, it's the size of a pepper to actually put onto an actual part with gateways that are in the ceiling. Document management, I know that's something that Ray's involved in, but here in BCAD, it was 4 clicks to the asset. And they wanted to use document management. We're consuming Esri right here. This will eventually be indoors. There's a chiller room. And what they're losing is 25% labor utilization because they have to physically go to a file folder structure just to look at a drawing right now. So what we're doing is we'll say, let's click on the chiller room and let's look at an as-built emergency plan or something that's going on there. And this is from the maintenance side, but it's really coming from design and construction. And when I click on the as-built right here, just through SharePoint, 4 clicks to the asset, that's all they want. Just through SharePoint, they'll be able to quickly pull up the file that's connected with it. So a restroom's overflowing, I need to know where the clean out is. I can't wait for someone to say, pull me, this or that, and I'd had turnover in that department, so they wouldn't even know So this is something that infrastructure is using, but is tied again to the actual map and geolocation. This is not to be spooky, but Atlanta is tracking crowdsourcing. And what we're doing is we put the geospatial map, again, same indoor mapping data format, and we're turning on active devices that you guys have when your Bluetooth and Wi-Fi signals are on. So if your Wi-Fi signal is going every 8 seconds, you're a red dot, and it'll be A to B. If you're opted into the app, I'm getting you at meter accuracy. That could be a custodian, that could be a wheelchair, that could be whatever you want it to be, but they have an app turned on so I can find them. And then the next level of this is the analytics that come behind it. But again, we're using mapping as a source of truth to really come up with some algorithms that tell you more about the space. The last one is, right now you'll see we'll turn on heat maps. And then finally, when we get into geofencing, this is what Uber and Lyft are very excited about, is that we can geofence now the curbside, inside, and see their passengers, but also give them real data that's coming from that geofence. How long did they wait? What did they do? And all we're doing is taking statistics from a lot of those movements in the lat long. Okay? The last one I'm going to show you is what we're working on, which ties to mapping again, is the virtual reality piece and how we're doing that inside of smart glasses. So right here, you're going to see another IoT tech, and he's just going to scan a QR code. That's the asset right there. And in that, he's actually seeing it on his phone, but he doesn't need to use his phone. He can also get that map inside what he sees here. So the goal of this is that to us, it's safety first. We don't want incidents to happen, but it's better facilities management, and you don't have enterprise level data going to this level yet, but it will be there. I can guarantee that. Finally, social media. So in airports, this airport sucks. This bathroom stinks. And as the CEO is sitting there of the airport and just causing mayhem across the organization because it's sitting on social media. So we're getting the lat long of where that came from and starting to filter out what is really level 1 issue. You know, you see the word fire, we're going to pull it right to the top. If someone's complaining about customer service, it's going to get directed a certain way. So these are also inputs. Social media is going to be used as a location based of where did it come from. Building number 6, on the second level, someone said this was going on. So that's going to be much more important than campus-wide having executive leadership really, go off down a rabbit hole. So that's the end of the presentation. I just wanted to show you a different view of it. I think if there's any lessons learned, it's all organizational challenges from my end. But there is a ROI and an ROO, which we call return on objective, which is really doing more with less because you have these data sets. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep. Any questions? Sure.
When you're talking about tracking devices, if you're talking about tracking like the public, they would have to be hitting the Wi-Fi in the building, because like if they're not hitting the Wi-Fi, then they're going to be hitting some tower somewhere outside. Is that a problem with the data? Do you get bad data? Because
It's only inside the building. So you hit it on the head that they have to have Wi-Fi turned on, and they have to be inside the building. Now, we do have a way to take the blue dot off of GPS into Wi-Fi seamlessly on a map, but we can't track everything outside because they're sitting on someone's cell
you're
tower.
tracking them by which
Their MAC address.
you know they're hitting though. So like if somebody, let's say somebody was kind of in a position that was between two.
Yep.
It could be kind of like hitting one and no, that signal's stronger, and that signal's stronger, and you kind of depend. There's a lot of
So when we
correction that's going on.
When we work with the scan companies, when we get the fingerprints, we look for those overlaps, and then we try to correct them as best as we can, because you're right, it will throw data off. But it's triangulation, so it's where your signal's going, and then it's geometry from that point. And that's how we get the red dot. Really, it's a MAC address or whatever we're looking for
You
Right.
don't even have to be logged into the network. It's just
No.
the fact that you're pinging the network.
Yeah, you're looking for a Wi-Fi signal right now. We would be getting that information. And then I moved over here.
That you actually said, I want to
No.
connect to this Wi-Fi. It's-
Only the red dots. The blue dots, yes.
Wi-Fi's on even if you're not connected to this network in here. They can
Yeah.
track that.
The blue dots, yes, they are inside of an application. That's how we're getting them. They have more attributes to them. And VIP concierge services, they're starting to get this. I'm going to log in and make sure someone meets me at the door so I can get my journey all the way through. So everyone does not have to opt in, obviously, for that data. Any others? Cool. Thank you, Ray, for having. Yep, for sure.